The gunshot echoed across the dusty streets of Ventura, California, in 1876, sending Lila Evans diving behind a water trough as splinters exploded from the wooden post beside her head. This wasn't how she'd imagined her new life in the West would begin, but desperation had a way of reshaping expectations. The once promising gold mining town had seen better days, its boom times fading like the sunset over the distant mountains. "You can't hide forever, Miss Evans." The voice belonged to Jasper Quinn, a man whose patience had run as thin as his morals. "You owe me, and I aim to collect." Lila pressed her back against the rough wood, the coarse fabric of her travel-worn dress catching on the splintered edges. She'd come west with dreams of opportunity after the death of her parents left her penniless in Boston. The stagecoach journey had depleted her meager savings, and now, 3 weeks in Ventura, her situation had grown dire. "I told you I need more time." She shouted back, trying to keep her voice steady despite the hammering of her heart. "Time ain't money, and money's what I need." Another shot punctuated his words, this one striking the dirt mere inches from the trough. Lila closed her eyes, calculating her options. The boarding house was 2 streets away, but Quinn would surely follow. The sheriff's office was closer, but Sheriff Milton had made it clear that debts were private affairs unless blood was spilled. Right now, the only blood at risk was hers. The thunder of hoofbeats cut through her thoughts. A rider approached at a gallop, dust billowing behind the powerful chestnut stallion. The horse pulled up sharply between Lila and her pursuer, and she caught her first glimpse of the rider, a broad-shouldered man with a weathered face partially obscured by the shadow of his hat brim. "That's enough, Quinn." The voice was deep, commanding, leaving no room for argument. "This isn't how we settle things in Ventura." Quinn lowered his pistol slightly. "This ain't your business, Calloway. I'm making it my business." The rider, Calloway, dismounted in one fluid motion. "How much does she owe you?" $20 for room and board at my establishment, plus another 10 for damages to property when she tried to leave without paying. Lila's cheeks burned with shame and indignation. "That's not true. You tried to force yourself quiet." Calloway's command silenced her, though his tone wasn't unkind. He reached into his vest pocket and withdrew several bills. $30. "Take it and consider your business with the lady concluded." Quinn's eyes narrowed, but he stepped forward to snatch the money. "Didn't figure you for the rescuing type, Brody. And I didn't figure you for the shooting at women type, but here we are." Brody Calloway's hand rested casually on his holstered pistol. "We're done here." With a final glare at Lila, Quinn tucked the money away and stalked off toward his saloon. Only when he disappeared through the batwing doors did Lila allow herself to breathe. "Thank you," she managed, struggling to her feet. Up close, she could see her rescuer more clearly. His face was tanned by years under the western sun, with lines etching the corners of eyes that were a startling shade of blue. He wasn't handsome in the conventional sense. His nose had been broken at least once, and a thin scar traced his jawline, but there was something arresting about him. "Miss Evans, is it?" When she nodded, he continued. "Brody Calloway. I own the Lucky Strike mine about 10 miles out." "How do you know my name?" A smile briefly crossed his face. "Small town. Word travels fast when a new face arrives." He glanced toward Quinn's saloon. "You should be more careful about the company you keep." "I didn't exactly have a choice," she replied, brushing dust from her skirts. "I needed work, and the Black Ace was hiring, for serving drinks or for other services." His bluntness made her flinch. "I was hired as a singer," she said firmly. "When I refused Quinn's additional expectations, he claimed I owed him for room and board I'd never agreed to." Brody studied her, his expression unreadable. "Can you actually sing, Miss Evans?" Despite everything, Lila laughed. "Yes, Mr. Calloway, I can actually sing. I performed in concert halls back east before." She trailed off, unwilling to share her circumstances with this stranger. "Before life took an unexpected turn," he finished for her. "It happens to the best of us out here." He glanced up at the sky, where the afternoon sun was beginning its descent. "Do you have somewhere to go?" "I have a room at Mrs. Holloway's boarding house, at least for the next day or two, until my funds are completely exhausted." Brody nodded thoughtfully. "I might have a proposition for you, Miss Evans." Seeing her expression harden, he quickly added, "A legitimate one." My sister is getting married in 3 weeks. She's been planning this affair for months, invited half the territory. She's been begging me to find some proper entertainment. And you want me to sing at your sister's wedding? I'd pay you well. $50 for the day's work, plus meals and transportation to and from the ranch. He paused. It would give you some breathing room to figure out your next steps. Lila considered the offer. $50 was a small fortune given her current circumstances. That's very generous, but why would you do this for a stranger? Let's just say I have no love for Jasper Quinn, and anyone he's trying to bully starts with my good graces. He extended his hand. Do we have a deal? Lila hesitated only briefly before shaking his hand. We have a deal, Mr. Calloway. Good, I'll send a wagon for you the morning of the wedding, April 17th. Be ready at dawn. He tipped his hat and turned back to his horse. Mr. Calloway, she called after him. The $30 you paid Quinn. How do you expect me to repay that? He paused, one foot in the stirrup. Consider it an advance on your performance. With that, he mounted and rode away, leaving Lila standing in the dusty street, wondering if she'd just made a deal with the devil or found an unexpected guardian angel. The following weeks passed slowly for Lila. She took odd jobs mending clothes for the hotel, helping at the general store to stretch her dwindling funds. Each night, she practiced her singing in her small boarding house room, determined to prove her worth at the upcoming wedding. The morning of April 17th arrived with a knock on her door well before sunrise. Lila had been awake for hours, too nervous to sleep. She had washed and pressed her best dress, a modest blue gown with lace trim that had seen better days but would have to suffice. The driver who met her downstairs was a weathered ranch hand who introduced himself simply as Tom. The journey to the Calloway Ranch took nearly 3 hours, winding through rugged terrain that gradually gave way to lush pastureland. As they crested a final hill, Lila caught her breath at the sight below. The Calloway property was expansive, with a large 2-story ranch house built of sturdy timber, flanked by a series of well-maintained outbuildings. A corral held several magnificent horses, and in the distance, cattle grazed on rolling hills. Preparations for the wedding were well underway, with workers erecting a large canvas tent near a stand of oak trees. Tom helped Lila from the wagon. The womenfolk are in the main house. You'll want to report to Mrs. Lancaster. She's the groom's mother and has taken charge of everything. Lila thanked him and made her way toward the house, her nervousness growing with each step. She had performed before larger audiences, but never in such unfamiliar circumstances. The front door opened before she could knock, revealing a plump, pleasant-faced woman with graying hair. You must be Miss Evans. I'm Helen Lancaster, Marcus's mother. Come in, come in. We've been so looking forward to meeting you. She ushered Lila inside with surprising strength. Brody mentioned you have a voice like an angel, which we sorely need today with all these cowboys who couldn't carry a tune in a bucket. Lila smiled, touched by the warm welcome. Mr. Calloway is too kind. I hope I can live up to his praise. Well, you'll meet the bride shortly. She's in quite a state, as brides tend to be. Helen led Lila through a comfortably furnished parlor toward a back room where female voices could be heard. Sarah has been planning this day since she was 12 years old, I think. The bride's room was a flurry of activity. In the center stood a young woman with Brody's same striking blue eyes, though her hair was a lighter shade of brown. Around her, several other women fussed with her elaborate white dress and veil. Sarah, dear, this is Miss Evans, the singer Brody found for you. The bride looked up, her face brightening. Oh, thank goodness. I was beginning to think my brother had invented you to keep me from pestering him. She extended a hand. I'm Sarah Calloway, Lancaster in a few hours, I suppose. It's a pleasure to meet you, Miss Calloway. Your brother was very kind to offer me this opportunity. Sarah laughed. Kind, Brody? Now I know you're a stranger. Seeing Lila's confusion, she added, my brother has many qualities, but most people in these parts wouldn't list kindness among them. He's fair, though, and honest to a fault. Before Lila could respond, the door opened again and Brody himself entered. The room immediately fell silent. Brody Calloway, you know it's bad luck to see the bride before the wedding, Helen scolded. Since when do you believe in such nonsense, Mrs. Lancaster? He replied good-naturedly. His eyes found Lila's across the room, and something flickered in them that she couldn't identify. "I see our entertainment has arrived safely." "Yes, and we're all very grateful," Sarah said, "though I still don't understand how you found a classically trained singer in Ventura, of all places." Brody's mouth quirked in a half-smile. "Miss Evans and I had a chance meeting. I recognized talent when I heard it." "You haven't heard me sing yet," Lila pointed out. "Let's remedy that," he suggested. "The piano in the parlor is tuned and ready. I'd like to hear what we're paying for." His choice of words stung Lila more than it should have. "Of course," she said stiffly. "I'm here to provide a service, after all." If Brody noticed her change in demeanor, he gave no indication as he led the way to the parlor. The upright piano there was indeed well maintained, a surprise in this frontier setting. Lila took a seat on the bench, her fingers finding the keys with practiced ease. "Any requests?" she asked, looking up at the small audience that had gathered. "Something fitting for a wedding," Sarah suggested from the doorway, where she stood watching with interest. Lila nodded and began to play, her fingers dancing across the keys as she launched into Beautiful Dreamer. When she began to sing, the room fell silent. Her voice, clear and strong, filled the space with warmth. She sang with her eyes closed, letting the music wash away her uncertainties. When the final note faded, she opened her eyes to find everyone staring. Sarah was openly weeping. "That was beautiful," the bride whispered. Brody's expression was intense, his eyes never leaving Lila's face. "I told you," he said simply. The rest of the morning passed in a blur of preparation. Lila was given a comfortable room to rest and prepare for the ceremony, which was scheduled for early afternoon. From her window, she watched as guests began to arrive, ranchers and their families, townspeople from Ventura, and what appeared to be mining associates of Brody's. A soft knock at her door revealed Helen, carrying a garment bag. "I thought you might appreciate something fresh to wear for your performance," she said, laying the bag across the bed. "This belonged to my niece. She's about your size, and she left it behind after her last visit." Inside was a gown of deep emerald silk, far finer than anything Lila had worn since leaving Boston. "I couldn't possibly, nonsense. A performer needs to look the part. Besides, it's just gathering dust in the wardrobe." Unable to refuse such generosity, Lila accepted with heartfelt thanks. When Helen had gone, she carefully changed into the gown, marveling at how perfectly it fit. The looking glass revealed a transformation. The rich color brought out the green flecks in her hazel eyes, and the cut of the dress flattered her figure in ways her worn traveling clothes never could. The ceremony itself was beautiful. Held beneath the oak trees, with wildflowers decorating every available surface, it had a simple elegance that would have been at home in the finest Boston garden. Lila sang as the bride processed, her voice carrying across the assembled guests. Throughout, she was conscious of Brody standing tall beside the groom, his eyes occasionally finding hers. As the festivities moved to the reception tent, Lila continued her role, performing songs both tender and lively as the celebration progressed. During a break, she found herself approached by several guests who complimented her voice. "You're wasted out here, my dear," said an older gentleman who introduced himself as a former theater owner from San Francisco. "With a voice like that, you could be performing in opera houses." "That was once the dream," she admitted. "Dreams don't die unless we let them," he replied, handing her a card. "If you ever find yourself in San Francisco, come see me." She tucked the card into her bodice, hope flickering within her for the first time in months. As the afternoon wore on, Lila found herself enjoying the celebration despite her hired status. The food was plentiful, the company pleasant, and there was a genuine warmth to the gathering that reminded her of family celebrations long past. As the sun began to set, lanterns were lit throughout the tent, casting a golden glow over the proceedings. Lila had just finished another song when Brody appeared at her side, offering a glass of punch. "You've more than earned your fee," he said. "Everyone is enchanted. Thank you." She accepted the drink gratefully. "Your sister and Mr. Lancaster seem very happy together." "They are. Marcus is a good man. He'll treat her well." Brody's gaze drifted to the newlyweds who were dancing together in the center of the tent. "Sarah deserves happiness, and you." "What do you deserve, Mr. Calloway?" The question seemed to surprise him. "I have what I need," he replied after a moment. "A successful mine, good land, a respected name. But not happiness." His eyes returned to her, sharper now. "Happiness is a luxury in these parts, Miss Evans. Most of us settle for security and purpose." "That sounds very practical. Practical keeps you alive out here." He set his empty glass down. "Would you care to dance? I believe my duties as best man include at least one turn around the floor." The request caught her off guard. "I'm not sure it would be appropriate. I'm the hired entertainment after all." Something flickered across his face, irritation, perhaps. "Consider it a break in your duties, then." Before she could form another objection, he had taken her hand and led her to the dance floor. His movements were surprisingly graceful for such a powerfully built man, and he led with the confidence of someone who knew exactly what he was doing. "You dance well for a minor," Lila observed. "I wasn't always a minor," he replied. "I studied law back east before the war, Harvard, class of '59. The revelation stunned her. How does a Harvard-educated lawyer end up mining gold in California? The war changes men, Miss Evans. After Gettysburg, I couldn't stomach the thought of spending my life arguing in courtrooms." His hand tightened slightly at her waist. "Out here, things are simpler. A man is judged by his actions, not his words." "Is that why you helped me in town? Actions over words." Brody studied her face for a long moment. "I helped you because it was the right thing to do, and because there was something about you. A dignity, despite your circumstances. It's rare in these parts." The music ended before she could respond, and Brody stepped away with a formal bow. "Thank you for the dance, Miss Evans." As he walked away, Lila felt a strange emptiness. Despite his gruff exterior, there was more to Brody Calloway than met the eye layers she found herself wanting to uncover. The celebration continued well into the evening. Lila sang until her voice began to tire, at which point a local fiddler took over the musical duties. Freed from her responsibilities, she slipped away from the tent, seeking a moment of quiet beneath the star-filled sky. The night air was cool against her skin as she made her way to a small garden beside the main house. A stone bench offered a place to rest her feet, which ached from hours of standing. The moon cast silver light across the landscape, transforming the ranch into something almost magical. "Escaping your admirers," Brody's voice came from the shadows, startling her. "Just seeking a moment of peace," she replied, watching as he emerged into the moonlight. "The celebration is lovely, but rather overwhelming after so long." He sat beside her on the bench, leaving a respectful distance between them. "I know what you mean. I've never been one for crowds myself. Yet you've built quite a life here. The ranch, the mine, you must employ dozens of men. 53 at last count. Good men, mostly. They depend on me to make the right decisions." He gazed out at the darkened landscape. "It's a responsibility I don't take lightly." "Is that why you helped me?" "Another responsibility." Brody turned to face her, his expression serious. "No, that was something else entirely." The intensity in his eyes made her heart quicken. "Mr. Calloway, Brody," he corrected. "After sharing my sister's wedding day, I think we can dispense with formalities, Lila." Her name on his lips sent a shiver through her that had nothing to do with the evening chill. "Brody," she acknowledged, "I want to thank you properly for the opportunity today. The fee you're paying will make an enormous difference in my circumstances." "What will you do? Return to Ventura?" Lila hesitated. "I'm not sure Ventura holds much promise for me. I was thinking of San Francisco, perhaps. A gentleman today suggested I might find work in the theaters there." "San Francisco is a long journey for a woman alone." His voice held concern rather than judgment. "And the city has its own dangers." "I've survived this far," she said with more confidence than she felt. "Indeed you have." He seemed about to say more when a voice called his name from the direction of the tent. "Brody, where have you gotten to? It's time for the final toast." It was Helen Lancaster, her voice carrying clearly through the night air. With obvious reluctance, Brody stood. "Duty calls." "Will you join us?" Lila nodded, accepting his offered hand to rise from the bench. His touch lingered a moment longer than necessary before he released her, and they walked back toward the celebration in companionable silence. The remainder of the evening passed in a whirlwind of toasts, cake cutting, and the traditional sending off of the newlyweds to their new home, a smaller house that Brody had built on the eastern edge of his property, as a wedding gift. As the last guests began to depart, Lila found herself both exhausted and exhilarated by the day's events. Helen approached her as servants began clearing the tables. "You were wonderful, my dear. Everyone was asking about you." She pressed an envelope into Lila's hand. "Brody asked me to give you this, your payment, plus a little extra for exceeding all expectations." "That's very generous," Lila said, touched by the gesture. "Will Mr. Calloway be returning? I'd like to thank him personally. He's seeing off the last of the mining associates." "Business never stops for that man, even on his sister's wedding day." Helen shook her head fondly. "He mentioned you'll be staying the night before returning to town tomorrow." "Yes, that was the arrangement. Good, get some rest, dear, you've earned it." With a motherly pat on Lila's arm, Helen departed, leaving Lila alone in the rapidly emptying tent. In her assigned room, Lila carefully removed the borrowed gown and hung it up, before slipping into her nightclothes. The envelope on the bedside table beckoned, and when she opened it, she gasped at the contents. Instead of the promised $50, Brody had paid her $100, along with a hastily scrawled note. "For safe passage to San Francisco if that's where your dreams lead. BC." The unexpected generosity brought tears to her eyes. She had not experienced such kindness since her parents' deaths, and coming from the seemingly stern mine owner, it touched her deeply. Sleep came quickly that night, with dreams of possible futures dancing through her mind. Morning arrived with a gentle knock on her door. A young maid entered with a tray of breakfast and news that the wagon would be ready to take her back to town by 9 o'clock. As Lila ate, she gazed out at the ranch in daylight, admiring the well-ordered beauty of the place. It spoke of care and attention to detail qualities she was beginning to associate with its owner. She had just finished dressing when another knock came. This time it was Brody himself. "Good morning," he said, his hat in his hands. "I hope you slept well." "Very well, thank you." She hesitated, then added, "And thank you for your generosity. The additional payment was unexpected. You earned it." His eyes moved briefly to the packed valise on her bed. "So you're planning to leave Ventura? I think it's for the best. There's little opportunity there for someone like me." Brody nodded slowly. "Before you go, there's something I'd like to show you. If you can spare an hour before your departure." Curiosity piqued, Lila agreed. Brody led her outside to where 2 horses waited, already saddled. Seeing her apprehension, he smiled slightly. "Don't worry. Daisy here is the gentlest mare on the ranch. She was Sarah's favorite before she took to riding stallions to prove she was as good as any man. That sounds like a story. Several, in fact, most ending with me fishing her out of trouble." There was fondness in his voice as he helped Lila mount. "Have you ridden before?" "A little in the park back east. Nothing like this. Just hold the reins lightly and let Daisy follow my lead. She knows the way." They set off at a gentle pace, leaving the main ranch buildings behind. Brody led them along a well-worn trail that wound through stands of oak and pine, before opening into a valley that took Lila's breath away. Wildflowers carpeted the ground in a riot of color, stretching toward distant mountains still capped with snow. "This is beautiful," Lila breathed, drinking in the vista. "This land has been in my family for 2 generations, Brody said, a note of pride in his voice. "My grandfather came west in '49, not for gold but for open spaces. He was a visionary in his way." He guided his horse to a large, flat rock overlooking the valley and dismounted, then helped Lila down. "Why did you want to show me this?" she asked as they stood side by side. "Because I wanted you to see possibilities." He turned to face her, his expression earnest. "Ventura isn't the only option, Lila. Neither is San Francisco." Understanding dawned slowly. "Are you suggesting I stay here? In what capacity exactly?" "I need someone to run the house," he said, the words coming quickly now. "With Sarah gone, things will fall into disarray. The ranch hands need proper meals, the accounts need keeping, and frankly, the place could use a woman's touch." Lila took a step back, disappointment washing through her. "You're offering me a position as your housekeeper." "As the ranch manager," he corrected. "It's a position of responsibility. You'd have your own quarters, good pay, and the respect of everyone on the property." "Why me? You barely know me." I'm a good judge of character. You're intelligent, capable, and not afraid of hard work. Those qualities are rare enough to recognize when they appear." He paused. "And I enjoy your company. That's rarer still." The compliment, unexpected and sincere, warmed her despite her reservations. "I'm not sure I'm qualified for such a position." "You managed your parents' household in Boston, didn't you?" Surprised, she asked. "How did you know that?" "I made inquiries after our first meeting. A woman traveling alone tends to have a story. Yours involved the death of your parents, substantial debts, and the necessary sale of your family home." Seeing her expression, he added, "I needed to know who I was inviting onto my property." "And into your sister's wedding." "Yes." He had the grace to look slightly apologetic. "I hope you can understand the precaution." Lila considered his words. The offer was tempting security, respect, and a chance to rebuild her life in a place of beauty. Yet something held her back. "I appreciate the offer, truly, but I'm not sure I can accept a position born of charity." "This isn't charity," Brody said firmly. "It's a business proposition. I need someone I can trust to manage the ranch house while I focus on the mine. Your abilities are worth every cent I'd pay you. And if it doesn't work out, if I'm not suited to ranch life after all, then I'll personally escort you to San Francisco with a glowing reference." His eyes held her steadily. "All I ask is that you give it a month. After that, the choice is yours." Lila gazed out over the valley, weighing her options. San Francisco was an unknown, a city of opportunity, but also of danger for a woman alone. Here, at least, she had the beginnings of connections: Helen's kindness, the guests who had appreciated her talent, and this enigmatic man whose motives she couldn't quite decipher. "1 month," she agreed finally, "but I'll earn my keep. No special treatment." Relief crossed Brody's face, quickly masked. "Agreed, you'll start tomorrow. The wagon can take you to town today to collect your belongings." "I don't have much to collect," she admitted. "Then consider today a day of rest. Tomorrow the real work begins." As they mounted their horses for the return journey, Lila wondered if she had made the right decision. There was something about Brody Calloway that unsettled her, not in a frightening way, but in a manner that made her acutely aware of herself in his presence. It was both thrilling and disconcerting. The month that followed proved both challenging and rewarding for Lila. The Calloway Ranch was a complex operation, with the main house serving as the heart of the enterprise. As ranch manager, she oversaw the kitchen staff, managed household accounts, ordered supplies, and coordinated the daily meals for the numerous ranch hands. Brody was often absent, spending long days at the Lucky Strike mine, but his presence was felt everywhere in the exacting standards he expected. When he was at the ranch, he treated Lila with polite professionalism, taking meals with her to discuss ranch business but rarely engaging in personal conversation. Despite the professional distance he maintained, Lila found herself increasingly drawn to him. There were moments: a lingering glance across the dinner table, the brush of his hand as he passed her documents to review that suggested he might feel the same. Yet he never crossed the invisible line he seemed to have drawn between them. As April turned to May, the promised month neared its end. Lila had settled into her role with unexpected ease, finding satisfaction in bringing order to the sprawling operation. She had even begun hosting small musical evenings for the ranch hands on Sundays, playing the parlor piano while the men sang along with varying degrees of skill. It was after one such evening, as the men dispersed to their bunks, that Brody found Lila still seated at the piano, playing softly for herself. "They look forward to these evenings all week," he said, leaning against the doorframe. "Thompson, who never says 2 words together, actually requested a song tonight." Lila smiled, her fingers still moving over the keys. "Music has a way of reaching people, even the quiet ones." "Indeed." He entered the room fully, taking a seat in the armchair nearest the piano. "Your month is nearly up." Her playing faltered briefly before continuing. "Yes, it is." "Have you made a decision?" Lila considered her answer carefully. The truth was, she had come to love the ranch and its rhythms. More problematically, she had come to care for its owner in a way that made professional distance increasingly difficult to maintain. "I'm not certain," she admitted. "The work suits me better than I expected." "You've exceeded all expectations," Brody said. The house hasn't run this smoothly in years. The men are happier, the accounts are in perfect order, and even Helen commented on the improvement when she visited last week. That's gratifying to hear. So you'll stay. There was something in his voice, a note of hope, perhaps, that made her look up from the piano. Is that what you want? Brody held her gaze. What I want and what I can offer are sometimes at odds, Lila. The use of her first name, rare in their daily interactions, sent a shiver through her. I don't understand. He rose and crossed to the piano, standing close enough that she could smell the pine and leather scent that clung to him. You're an educated woman from a good family. You deserve more than being a glorified housekeeper on a remote ranch. That's not how I see my position here, nevertheless. He seemed to be struggling with some internal conflict. Your talent deserves a wider audience. The ranch hands and I are poor substitutes for the concert halls you should be playing in. The concert halls never brought me the satisfaction this place has, she said softly. Here I feel useful, valued. You are valued, he said with sudden intensity. More than you know. The silence that followed was charged with unspoken possibilities. Finally, Brody stepped back, regaining his composure. The decision is yours, of course, but know that there will always be a place for you here should you want it. He turned to leave, then paused at the doorway. Good night, Lila. Good night, Brody. After he had gone, Lila remained at the piano, her thoughts in turmoil. The attraction she felt toward Brody had grown steadily over the past month, despite her best efforts to maintain professional distance. His words tonight suggested he might harbor similar feelings, yet something held him back. The following morning, Lila found a sealed envelope on her desk. Inside was a letter of recommendation praising her skills and character in the highest terms, along with a bank draft for an amount that made her gasp sufficient funds to establish herself comfortably in San Francisco, should she choose to go. The gesture was both generous and confusing. Was Brody encouraging her to leave, or merely ensuring she had options? Before she could seek him out to ask, one of the ranch hands arrived with news that Brody had been called to the mine on urgent business and wouldn't return until evening. The day passed slowly, with Lila attending to her duties while wrestling with her decision. By afternoon, she had made up her mind. She would stay not just for the position or the security it offered, but because something about this place and its owner had claimed a piece of her heart. When Brody returned that evening, however, he was not alone. A carriage followed his horse up the drive, and from it emerged an elegantly dressed woman approximately Lila's age, with golden hair and a porcelain complexion unmarred by the western sun. From her window, Lila watched as Brody helped the woman down, his manner solicitous. They spoke briefly before he escorted her into the house, his hand at the small of her back in a gesture of familiarity that sent a pang through Lila's chest. Composing herself, Lila went downstairs to greet the visitor as her position required. In the entrance hall, she found Brody instructing one of the maids to prepare the best guest room. Ah, Lila, he said upon seeing her, a hint of discomfort in his expression. Allow me to introduce Miss Vivian Harrington. Vivian, this is Miss Lila Evans, our ranch manager. Miss Harrington extended a gloved hand, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. Charmed, I'm sure. Brody has mentioned your unique arrangement. Miss Harrington is the daughter of my business partner in San Francisco, Brody explained. She'll be staying with us for a few weeks while her father concludes some business in the city. We'll ensure your stay is comfortable, Lila said with professional politeness, though questions burned within her. Will you be joining us for dinner, or would you prefer a tray in your room after your journey? I'm famished, actually, Vivian replied. Dinner would be lovely, though I may need a moment to refresh myself. Of course, I'll have Martha show you to your room. Lila summoned the maid, then turned to Brody. Will you be dining with us, Mr. Calloway? The return to formality was not lost on him. Yes, I will. There are matters I need to discuss with both of you. The evening meal was an exercise in restraint for Lila. Vivian dominated the conversation with tales of San Francisco society and reminiscences of past encounters with Brody that suggested a long and intimate acquaintance. Throughout, Brody was attentive but reserved, his eyes occasionally finding Lila's across the table with an expression she couldn't decipher. When the dessert plates had been cleared, Brody finally addressed the matters he had mentioned earlier. Lila, I received word today that the lucky strike has hit a particularly rich vein. It will require my full attention for the foreseeable future. Congratulations, she said, genuinely pleased for his success despite her personal confusion. That's wonderful news. It is, but it presents certain challenges. I'll be staying at the mine camp most nights, overseeing the operation directly. He glanced at Vivian. With Vivian's presence here, I wanted to ensure both of you understand your respective roles. Vivian smiled sweetly. I'm sure Miss Evans and I will get along famously. After all, she'll be seeing to the household while you're away, and I'll simply be enjoying the country air. Exactly, Brody said, though a hint of strain showed around his eyes. Lila, I'll leave any social arrangements for Vivian to your discretion. The usual accounts are available for any expenses. Of course. Lila maintained her composure with effort. Will there be anything else? Just one thing. Brody withdrew an envelope from his jacket. This arrived for you today from San Francisco. I believe it's from the theater owner you met at the wedding. Lila accepted the envelope with surprise. She had written to the gentleman a week ago, inquiring about potential opportunities, but hadn't expected such a prompt reply. Thank you. If you'll excuse me, I have some matters to attend to before retiring. She stood, nodding to both Brody and Vivian. Good night. In the privacy of her room, Layla opened the letter. The theater owner's response was enthusiastic. He had an immediate opening for a vocalist in his newest production, and offered a very generous salary. He requested she come to San Francisco as soon as possible for a formal audition, though he assured her the position was essentially hers if she wanted it. The opportunity she had dreamed of was now within reach, yet Layla felt only a hollow ache as she considered it. The arrival of Vivian Harrington had made her situation at the ranch suddenly precarious in ways that had nothing to do with her professional capabilities. Sleep eluded her that night, and she rose early, determined to speak with Brody before he departed for the mine. She found him in the stable, overseeing the saddling of his horse. You're up early, he observed as she approached. I needed to speak with you before you left. She hesitated, then pressed on. About Miss Harrington's visit. What about it? I think you should have warned me that someone so close to you would be staying at the ranch. Brody's expression tightened. I didn't know myself until yesterday. William Harrington sent a telegram asking if Vivian could stay here while he concluded their business in San Francisco. As his partner, I could hardly refuse. I see. Lila took a breath. And your relationship with Miss Harrington is not your concern. His tone was sharper than she had ever heard from him. Seeing her flinch, he softened slightly. Vivian and I have known each other for years. Our fathers were business associates before the war. She seems to hold you in high regard. A shadow crossed Brody's face. There were expectations once. Nothing has been formalized. The implication was clear enough. Lila nodded, fighting to maintain her dignity. I received an offer from the theater in San Francisco. They want me to come as soon as possible. Something flickered in Brody's eyes, pain, perhaps, or resignation. Will you accept? I'm considering it. She met his gaze directly. I had planned to stay here, but circumstances seem to be suggesting another path. Don't make decisions based on Vivian's presence, Brody said, his voice low and urgent. It's temporary, I assure you. But your feelings for her aren't, Lila challenged. Brody ran a hand through his hair in frustration. It's complicated, Lila. There are obligations, expectations. I understand obligations all too well, Mr. Calloway. She stepped back, drawing her professional manner around her like armor. I'll ensure Miss Harrington's stay is comfortable. You need not worry about the ranch in your absence. Lila, he reached for her, but she was already turning away. Safe travels, Mr. Calloway. I'm sure the new vein will prove most profitable. The following weeks tested Lila's resolve and professionalism to their limits. True to his word, Brody remained at the mine camp most nights, returning to the ranch only for brief visits that coincided suspiciously with Vivian's social engagements in town. For her part, Vivian maintained a facade of cordial politeness toward Lila, while subtly undermining her authority with the household staff. Small changes appeared around the ranch house, rearranged furniture, altered meal schedules, new decorative items that spoke of Vivian's taste rather than the practical elegance Lila had established. Through it all, Lila maintained her dignity, focusing on her duties while privately making preparations to leave. She wrote to the theater owner accepting his offer and arranged for passage to San Francisco at the end of the month. Her decision was solidified when, during one of Brody's brief returns to the ranch, she overheard a conversation between him and Vivian on the veranda. "You can't keep putting this off, Brody," Vivian was saying, her tone honey-sweet but with an underlying edge. "Daddy expects an announcement before the summer's end. I've made no promises to your father, Vivian. Perhaps not explicitly, but you know as well as I do that our families have been planning this union for years. The mine partnership, the shipping contracts, it all depends on our marriage." There was a long silence before Brody replied, "I need more time." "Time for what?" "To pursue your fascination with that singing housekeeper. Don't think I haven't noticed the way you look at her. Lila is the ranch manager and a valued employee, nothing more." The words, though Layla knew they were likely spoken to placate Vivian, cut deeper than she could have anticipated. She slipped away before they could discover her presence, her decision firmly made. She would leave at the first opportunity. That opportunity came sooner than expected. 2 days later, as Lila was reviewing the monthly accounts in her office, one of the ranch hands burst in without knocking. "Miss Evans, there's been an accident at the mine. Mr. Calloway's been hurt." Lila's heart seized in her chest. "How badly? What happened?" "Tunnel collapse. They're bringing him back now. Doc Wilson's been sent for from town." Without hesitation, Lila began issuing orders, preparing Brody's room, gathering medical supplies, sending riders to ensure the doctor's swift arrival. When Vivian appeared, awakened from her afternoon rest by the commotion, Lila briefly explained the situation. "Oh, how awful," Vivian exclaimed, pressing a handkerchief to her lips. What should I do?" "Perhaps you could oversee the preparation of broth and tea for when he's able to take nourishment," Lila suggested, assigning a task that would keep Vivian occupied but out of the way. The wagon bearing Brody arrived within the hour. He was conscious but pale with pain, his right leg splinted and bandaged, his face lacerated from falling debris. Lila directed the men to carry him carefully to his room, where she had prepared everything the doctor might need. "Miss Evans," he said weakly as they settled him on the bed. "Always." "Efficient. Save your strength," she replied, her professional demeanor masking her inner turmoil. "The doctor will be here soon." When Dr. Wilson arrived, he examined Brody thoroughly before delivering his assessment. Broken leg, 3 broken ribs, and a nasty bump to the head. "He's damn lucky to be alive." The doctor looked at Lila. "He'll need careful tending for several weeks, complete bed rest for at least 10 days, then very limited movement after that." "I understand," Lila said. "We'll ensure he follows your instructions. See that you do." "He's not the most compliant patient, from what I recall of his last injury." After the doctor had gone, leaving detailed instructions and medications, Lila organized a rotation of care for Brody. She assigned the most experienced ranch hand to the night shift, took the most demanding daytime hours herself, and gave Vivian the afternoon period when Brody would likely be sleeping. The arrangement worked well for the first 2 days. Brody drifted in and out of consciousness due to the pain medications, rarely lucid enough for extended conversation. Lila tended to him with professional efficiency, bathing his face, changing his bandages, and ensuring he took his medicine on schedule. On the 3rd day, however, Brody was more alert when Lila arrived for her morning shift. Vivian had just left, complaining of a headache brought on by the sickroom atmosphere. "She's not cut out for nursing," Brody observed as Lila checked his bandages. "Few are," Lila replied neutrally. "How is the pain today?" "Manageable." He caught her wrist as she adjusted his pillow. "Lila, look at me." Reluctantly, she met his gaze. His blue eyes were clear despite the lingering pain evident in the tightness around his mouth. "I heard you're leaving for San Francisco next week." Lila's surprise must have shown on her face, for he added, "Vivian mentioned it. She seemed quite pleased with the information. I was going to tell you when you were stronger." Lila gently extracted her wrist from his grasp. "The theater offer is time-sensitive, and you've accepted it. Yes. Brody closed his eyes briefly. I suppose I should congratulate you. It's what you wanted after all. Is it? The question escaped before she could stop it. His eyes opened, searching her face. Isn't it? Lila turned away, busying herself with straightening items on the bedside table. It's an opportunity I can't afford to pass up. Because of Vivian. Because it's the sensible choice, she corrected. You said yourself I deserve more than being a housekeeper on a remote ranch. I was wrong, Brody said quietly. You deserve whatever makes you happy. Does leaving make you happy, Lila? The directness of the question caught her off guard. I don't see that I have much choice. Your understanding with Miss Harrington makes my position here untenable. There is no understanding, he said with sudden force. Not on my part, at least. That's not what I overheard on the veranda. The admission slipped out before she could stop it. Brody's expression shifted from confusion to understanding. You heard Vivian pressing me about marriage, and your response that I was nothing more than a valued employee. The hurt she had suppressed rose to the surface, which I understand completely. It would be inappropriate for anything else to develop between us. Inappropriate. Brody struggled to sit up straighter, wincing at the movement. Is that what you think has held me back? Propriety? What else? You're a successful mine owner from an established family. I'm a penniless singer who lost everything and came west in desperation. You're the most remarkable woman I've ever met, Brody countered, his voice rough with emotion. Talented, intelligent, resilient. Your circumstances don't define you, Lila. Then what has kept you at arm's length all these months? Why encourage me to go to San Francisco when? She faltered. When what? When every moment in your presence makes me want to stay, she finished softly. The confession hung in the air between them. Brody's expression softened, vulnerability replacing his usual guarded demeanor. I kept my distance because I thought it was what you wanted, what you deserved. A chance to pursue your dreams, not to be tied to a man who spends half his life in a mine shaft and the other half arguing with cattle ranchers over water rights. He reached for her hand again, and this time she didn't pull away. I told Vivian that evening that I couldn't marry her. That my heart was already given elsewhere, whether that gift was wanted or not. Lila's breath caught. Brody. A knock at the door interrupted the moment. It was one of the ranch hands looking apologetic. Begging your pardon, Miss Evans, but there's a gentleman here from San Francisco. Says he's come to escort you back for your audition. Confusion crossed Lila's face. I wasn't expecting an escort. The audition isn't for another week. Says there's been a change of plans. The production's been moved up, and they need you there by the day after tomorrow. Lila glanced at Brody, whose expression had turned carefully neutral. Tell him I'll be down shortly, she told the ranch hand. When they were alone again, Brody spoke first. It seems your opportunity won't wait. I didn't arrange for an escort, Lila said. It feels orchestrated somehow. Vivian, Brody said grimly. She must have written to someone in San Francisco. Her father has connections throughout the state. Why would she do that? To remove you from the equation. He attempted to sit up further, grimacing with the effort. Lila, don't go, not like this. I need to at least speak with this messenger, she said, her mind racing, to understand what's happening. Of course. Brody's jaw tightened. But promise me you'll return before making any decisions. Lila nodded, her heart pounding as she left the room. In the parlor, she found a well-dressed man with the polished manner of someone accustomed to city life. Miss Evans, I presume? Jonathan Thorne, at your service. He offered a business card identifying him as an associate of the theater owner. I've been sent to escort you to San Francisco for your audition. The production schedule has been accelerated, and Mr. Harrington specifically recommended I come retrieve you personally. Mr. Harrington, Lila's suspicion deepened. William Harrington, indeed. A principal investor in the production, he spoke most highly of your talents. The pieces fell into place with alarming clarity. This was no coincidence, it was a calculated move to separate her from Brody. I appreciate your making the journey, Mr. Thorne, but I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding. I won't be able to leave immediately as Mr. Calloway has been injured in a mining accident. As ranch manager, my responsibilities require me to remain until he's recovered. Thorne's pleasant expression faltered slightly. I was given to understand by Miss Harrington that you were quite eager to depart. She mentioned your bags were already packed. Did she? Lila maintained her composure with effort. How presumptuous of her. While I'm certainly interested in the audition, Mr. Calloway's health takes precedence at present. Please convey my apologies to the theater and assure them I'll be in touch once the situation here is resolved. This is most irregular, Thorne protested. The opportunity may not remain open indefinitely. Then it wasn't meant to be, Lila replied with more confidence than she felt. Good day, Mr. Thorne. I'll have one of the ranch hands drive you back to town. After seeing the flustered messenger off, Lila sought out Vivian, finding her in the garden pretending to read a novel. Your friend has departed, Lila announced, making no effort to hide her anger. Perhaps you'd care to explain why you felt entitled to make travel arrangements on my behalf. Vivian closed her book with deliberate calm. I was merely helping to facilitate the opportunity you claim to want. Brody will be bedridden for weeks, and I'm perfectly capable of overseeing his recovery. Are you? When you can barely spend an hour in his sick room without developing a mysterious headache. I'm delicate by nature, Vivian replied, color rising in her cheeks. But I am to be his wife, and these duties will fall to me eventually. Has he asked for your hand then? Vivian's hesitation was brief but telling. It's understood between our families. Brody is simply being stubborn about the formalities. I think you'll find he's being more than stubborn. Lila stepped closer, her voice lowering. He told me about your conversation on the veranda. About his refusal to marry you. He was confused, emotional. Vivian rose, abandoning the pretense of calm. Whatever infatuation he feels for you will pass. Men like Brody don't marry women like you women with no family, no connections, no dowry. The words stung, but Layla stood her ground. Perhaps not, but neither do they marry women they don't love, regardless of family expectations. Love, Vivian laughed bitterly. What does love have to do with marriage among our class? It's about suitable matches, combining assets, strengthening family connections. Brody understands this, even if he's temporarily forgotten. I think you underestimate him, Layla said quietly, and I think it's time for you to leave, Miss Harrington. Your presence is distressing to Mr. Calloway in his current condition. You can't dismiss me. This isn't your house. No, but it is Brody's, and as ranch manager, I speak with his authority when he's indisposed. Lila's tone left no room for argument. I'll have your things packed and the carriage readied. You can be in town by evening. Vivian's face contorted with fury. You'll regret this. My father can take up any concerns with Mr. Calloway when he's recovered, Lila finished firmly. Good day, Miss Harrington. The confrontation left Lila shaking with suppressed emotion, but she allowed herself no time to dwell on it. There were arrangements to be made, staff to direct, and most importantly, a patient who needed her care. When she returned to Brody's room, she found him attempting to get out of bed. What are you doing? She demanded, rushing to his side. I heard raised voices, he said, grimacing in pain. Thought you might need support. The only support you need to worry about is for that broken leg, she scolded, helping him back against the pillows. I've handled the situation. Vivian is leaving. Surprise and something like admiration crossed his face. You dismissed her. I suggested her presence was detrimental to your recovery, which is entirely true. Lila adjusted his blankets. She didn't take it well, I imagine not. A smile tugged at his lips despite the pain. You're formidable when roused, Miss Evans, so I've been told. She checked his bandages, reassured to find no fresh bleeding. She tried to arrange my departure as well. Apparently the Harringtons have influence with the theater in San Francisco. Brody's smile faded. Will you still go once I'm recovered? The question hung between them, laden with unspoken hopes and fears. Lila took a deep breath, her heart hammering in her chest. I don't think my future lies in San Francisco after all, she said softly. If there's a reason for me to stay. Brody reached for her hand, his fingers intertwining with hers. There is, Lila. There has been from the moment you stood your ground against Jasper Quinn in that dusty street. He tugged her gently closer. I've been a fool, keeping my distance when every day I've fallen deeper in love with you. The declaration, so long hoped for but unexpected in this moment, brought tears to Lila's eyes. You love me, with everything I am, he confirmed, his gaze never leaving hers. "I thought I was protecting you from a life you hadn't chosen, giving you freedom to pursue your dreams. Instead, I nearly lost you to my own stubborn pride." "We're both stubborn," Lila admitted, a smile breaking through her tears. "And I love you too, Brody Calloway, more than I thought possible." He pulled her down until their foreheads touched. "Stay with me. Not as my ranch manager, but as my partner in everything. Marry me, Lila." "Yes," she whispered without hesitation. "Yes, I'll marry you." Their first kiss was gentle, mindful of Brody's injuries, but filled with the promise of deeper passion to come. When they finally parted, both were smiling despite the tears that shimmered in their eyes. "You know," Brody said thoughtfully, "this isn't exactly how I planned to propose. I had envisioned something more romantic than a sick declaration." "I find it perfectly romantic," Lila assured him. "Though perhaps we should keep the full story to ourselves when we tell your sister. Sarah will be ecstatic regardless. She's been not so subtly hinting that you would make an excellent sister-in-law since the wedding." "Has she now?" Lila laughed, joy bubbling through her. "And here I thought I was being so professional and reserved. About as reserved as a woman who challenges Vivian Harrington and sends her packing can be," Brody teased. "Which is to say, not very." Lila's expression sobered slightly. "The Harringtons may cause problems for you. For the mine partnership, let them try," Brody said with confidence. "The Lucky Strike is producing well enough that I can buy out William's share if necessary, and there are other investors who don't try to barter their daughters as part of business negotiations. Still, I never meant to come between you and your business interests. You haven't. You've shown me what truly matters." He squeezed her hand. "Now, as your patient, I think I require regular doses of my fiancé's company to ensure a swift recovery. Doctor's orders." "Mine," he said, pulling her down for another kiss. The following weeks passed in a blur of joy for Lila, despite the challenges of nursing Brody back to health. True to the doctor's warnings, he proved an impatient patient, constantly testing the limits of his recovery and requiring frequent reminders to rest. Word of their engagement spread quickly throughout the ranch, met with approval from the hands who had come to respect Lila's management and appreciate the improvements she had brought to their daily lives. Letters of congratulation arrived from Sarah and her husband, promising a visit as soon as Brody was well enough for company. The expected backlash from the Harringtons materialized in the form of a tersely worded letter from William, threatening to withdraw his investment in the Lucky Strike. Brody responded with an equally terse offer to buy out his share at fair market value, an offer that was grudgingly accepted when it became clear that Brody would not be swayed. By the time summer arrived in full force, Brody was walking with only a slight limp, eager to resume his duties at the mine and the ranch. The wedding was planned for September, when the worst of the summer heat would have passed and the countryside would be at its most beautiful. On a warm evening in late August, Brody led Lila to the garden where they had first discussed her staying at the ranch. A small table had been set beneath the oak trees, with candles casting a golden glow over the fine china and crystal. "What's the occasion?" Lila asked, taking in the romantic setting. "I promised you a proper proposal," Brody reminded her, pulling out her chair. "One that didn't involve bandages and pain medication." Lila smiled as she sat, watching him take his place across from her. "I thought we were already engaged." "We are. But I wanted to do this right." He reached across the table to take her hand. "When I first saw you in that dusty street in Ventura, standing your ground despite the danger, I knew there was something special about you. What I didn't know was how completely you would transform my life." He withdrew a small velvet box from his pocket and opened it to reveal a ring with a stunning emerald surrounded by diamonds. "This was my grandmother's. She was a strong woman who came west with nothing but her wits and determination, much like you. I think she would have approved of you wearing it." Tears blurred Lila's vision as Brody slipped the ring onto her finger. "It's beautiful," she whispered, "not half as beautiful as you." He raised her hand to his lips, kissing it tenderly. "I love you, Lila Evans. More today than yesterday, and less than I will tomorrow. And I love you, Brody Calloway." She leaned across the table to kiss him properly, "more than I ever thought possible." Their wedding day dawned clear and perfect, with just enough autumn crispness in the air to make the celebration comfortable. The same oak grove where Sarah had been married now hosted another Calloway wedding, though this one was smaller and more intimate, with only close friends and ranch employees in attendance. Lila wore a gown of ivory silk, simpler than the elaborate creations favored in San Francisco, but perfect for a ranch wedding. Sarah had helped with the preparations, delighted to welcome Lila officially into the family. As Lila walked toward Brody, who waited beneath an arch of wildflowers with the pastor, she marveled at how completely her life had changed in the span of 6 months. From desperate and alone on the streets of Ventura to beloved and cherished, about to marry the man who had seen her worth from the beginning. The ceremony was brief but heartfelt, with vows that spoke of partnership, respect, and enduring love. When the pastor pronounced them husband and wife, Brody pulled Lila into a kiss that prompted cheers and a few good-natured whistles from the ranch hands. The celebration continued well into the evening, with music, dancing, and enough food to feed twice their number. As the last of the daylight faded, Brody led Lila away from the festivities toward the main house. "Where are we going?" she asked, leaning into his embrace as they walked. "I have something to show you," he replied mysteriously. He guided her to a part of the house she had rarely visited, the east wing that had remained largely unused during her time as ranch manager. Opening a door, he gestured for her to enter. Inside, Lila gasped in delight. The room had been transformed into a music room, with a magnificent grand piano as its centerpiece. Bookshelves lined one wall, filled with sheet music and literature, while large windows offered views of the mountains in the distance. "Brody, this is." Words failed her as she took in the beautiful space. "Your domain," he finished for her, "a place for your music, for teaching if you wish, for creating whatever brings you joy." He led her to the piano, where an envelope rested on the polished surface. "And this is my real wedding gift to you." Inside the envelope, Lila found documents establishing an endowment for a music school in Ventura, with her name listed as director and primary instructor. "I don't understand," she said, looking up at him in confusion. "You said once that you found satisfaction in feeling useful, valued," Brody reminded her. "Your talent deserves an audience, Lila. This way you can share your gift without leaving home. The school will be built in town, but you'll have complete authority over its operation." Overwhelmed by the thoughtfulness of the gift, Lila threw her arms around her new husband. "Thank you," she whispered against his chest, "for seeing me, for believing in me." "Always," he promised, holding her close. "From the first moment, I saw not just who you were, but who you could be given the chance. All I've done is provide the opportunity, the rest has been entirely your doing." Later that night, as they lay together in the master bedroom that was now theirs to share, Lila traced the contours of Brody's face with gentle fingers. "What are you thinking?" he asked, capturing her hand to kiss her palm. "I'm thinking about the day we met," she admitted. "How desperate I was, how uncertain my future seemed. When you paid Quinn what I supposedly owed him, I felt both grateful and humiliated." "I never meant to humiliate you," Brody said softly. "I know that now. But in that moment when you said you paid for me. Now finish it, it felt like another transaction in a life that had become a series of desperate bargains." She smiled at the memory. "And then you offered me a legitimate opportunity instead of what I feared. And found something far more valuable than I ever expected," Brody completed the thought. "A partner, a love I never thought I'd find." "We've come a long way from that dusty street," Lila murmured, nestling closer to him. "And we have a lifetime of roads ahead of us," he replied, kissing her tenderly. Together. 2 years later, the Calloway Ranch had flourished under their joint stewardship. The Lucky Strike mine continued to produce well, allowing Brody to invest in additional properties and expand their cattle operation. The music school in Ventura had opened its doors, with Lila dividing her time between teaching talented young students and managing the ranch alongside her husband. On a crisp autumn day much like their wedding day, Lila sat in her music room, one hand resting on her swollen belly as she played a gentle lullaby. At 7 months pregnant, She had begun to modify her schedule, though she insisted on continuing her work for as long as possible. Brody found her there, pausing in the doorway to watch his wife with undisguised adoration. 2 years of marriage had only deepened his love for her, and the impending arrival of their first child had brought a new dimension to their relationship. "Our son approves of Mozart," Lila said without looking up, sensing Brody's presence as she always did. "Or daughter," he reminded her, crossing to sit beside her on the piano bench. "Sarah is convinced we're having a girl. Sarah has been wrong about many things," Lila teased. "Remember when she insisted that the new stallion was untrainable, and you gentled him within a week," Brody remembered with a laugh. "My sister underestimates you at her peril." He placed his hand over Lila's on her belly, feeling the strong kick of their child beneath. "Active today, always." She leaned against him, content in the simple moment of connection. "I received a letter from Quinn today." Brody's expression darkened. "What does he want? To sell the Black Ace? He's leaving Ventura, heading to Nevada, where he claims the opportunities are greater." She glanced up at her husband's face. "He offered us first refusal on the property." "Us? Why would we want his saloon?" Lila's eyes sparkled with excitement. "Not as a saloon, as an expansion of the music school. The building is well constructed and centrally located. With some renovation, it could house performance spaces, additional classrooms." Understanding dawned in Brody's eyes. "You want to buy it?" "I think it would be poetic justice," she admitted, "transforming a place of exploitation into one of education and culture. And practical too, we're already outgrowing the current building." Brody considered the proposal thoughtfully. "How much is he asking?" "Less than it's worth, actually. I think he's eager to leave before the new sheriff takes office next month." "The sheriff you helped elect," Brody reminded her with pride. Lila had become a respected voice in Ventura, using her position as the music school director to advocate for community improvements and honest governance. "The community elected him," she corrected modestly. "I simply organized a few concerts to raise awareness of the issues, and persuaded half the territory that change was necessary." He kissed her forehead. "If you want Quinn's building, it's yours. Consider it done." "Ours," she corrected. "Everything we do is together, remember." "How could I forget? You remind me daily that marrying you was the wisest decision of my life." His tone was teasing, but his eyes conveyed the depth of his feeling. "And don't you forget it, Mr. Calloway." She turned her face up for a proper kiss, which he gladly provided. Their life together wasn't perfect. There were arguments, challenges, the occasional crisis at the mine or with the cattle, but it was rich with purpose, partnership, and deep, abiding love. The desperate woman in the dusty street and the stern mine owner had found in each other something neither had been looking for, but both desperately needed: a home in each other's hearts. As winter gave way to spring, the Calloway household welcomed its newest member, a healthy baby boy they named William Thomas Calloway, after both their fathers. Lila recovered quickly from the birth, eager to introduce their son to the world she and Brody had built together. On a perfect May morning, they sat together on the veranda of their home, Lila nursing their son while Brody read aloud from the latest letter from Sarah, who promised to visit in the summer with her own children. "She says Marcus is considering running for state office," Brody remarked, setting aside the letter. "With her encouraging him, he'll likely win." "Calloways are persuasive when they set their minds to something," Lila observed with a smile. "It runs in the family." "Speaking of family," Brody said, his expression growing serious, "there's something I've been meaning to ask you." Lila looked up, concerned by his tone. "What is it? Are you happy, truly happy with this life we've built? The ranch, the school, being tied to Ventura?" He hesitated. "I sometimes wonder if you ever regret not pursuing that opportunity in San Francisco." The question surprised her, but her answer came without hesitation. "Not for a single moment." She shifted their son to her shoulder, patting his back gently. "What I thought I wanted was recognition, applause, a return to the life I had before my parents died. What I needed was purpose, love, and the chance to create something meaningful." Relief softened Brody's features. "I just wanted to be sure." "You've given up so much and gained infinitely more," she interrupted firmly. "My life is fuller now than I ever dreamed possible. I have a husband I adore, a son who is perfect in every way, work that fulfills me, and a community that respects me. She reached for his hand. What more could any woman ask for, when you put it that way? He smiled, squeezing her fingers. I suppose I just needed to hear it. The mine expansion will take me away more often in the coming months, and I wanted to be certain you were content with our arrangements. I'm more than content, she assured him. I'm exactly where I belong, doing exactly what I was meant to do, with exactly whom I was meant to do it with. As if in agreement, little William let out a contented sigh against his mother's shoulder. Brody chuckled, reaching to stroke his son's downy head. He has your musical sense already, he observed. Perfect timing. And your determination, Lila countered. Have you seen how he focuses on what he wants, just like his father? They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the sun climb higher over their land, the future stretching before them as vast and promising as the western horizon. From desperate beginnings had grown a love strong enough to weather any storm, a partnership built on mutual respect and unwavering support. You paid for me that day in town, Lila mused softly, but what you really did was set me free, free to become who I was always meant to be. And you, my love, showed me that beneath the hard shell I'd built around myself was a man still capable of love, still worthy of being loved. Brody leaned forward to kiss her gently. We saved each other, I think. We did, Lila agreed, her heart full to bursting with gratitude for the twist of fate that had brought them together. And we'll keep doing so every day for the rest of our lives. As William drifted off to sleep in his mother's arms, and the ranch came alive with the day's activities around them, Brody and Lila Calloway sat content in the knowledge that what they had found in each other was rarer and more precious than any gold mine, a love built on understanding, respect, and the courage to see beyond appearances to the truth that lay beneath.